recording of this session so that I can share it with the others who have not been able to join. So look, for already 2-3 years, I have started again and again to disturb myself and to disturb colleagues around myself with a kind of the emergency call or wake up call by saying that we are very much still following the patterns and assumptions of how we do civil society, which has been formed in the 90s. But these 90s have been a very, very different time than the times in which we are now. Let's say in the 90s, we have been in an era of the democratic optimism, of the neoliberal globalization, and of the kind of Western unipolar dominant over the world. And now we are somewhere very, very kind of different. But in many ways, what I observe, maybe wrongly, but it seems to me that we are still very much repeating the patterns of the activism which has been developed in these 90s. And I do kind of more and more increasingly feel that we need to understand that we are in a different world, that we need to profoundly shake ourselves and basically what I said, reinvent the way how we do it. I will not now go too much in detail on kind of the explaining and analyzing what I think what is different in a current world. I will share with you, I have written a few things about that, so I will share with you a little bit more elaborated reflection on that. Let me now just make a few initial, let's say, points. Let's say the one is that international institutions do not work anymore. Let's say the international institutions like UN Security Council, UN Human Rights Council, the OBSE, and other institutions, they still pretend that function, but they do not really make impact anymore. But a lot of our activism for very, very long time has been based on collecting the evidences, what is wrong in our country, and then going in these capitals of the policy making and basically trying to alert attention and to get whatever kind of the pressure on our government. And that is out. That has gone. Let's say the world, let's say that simply doesn't work anymore. The second thing is in today's world, autocrats are very, very quick and very assertive and very effective in helping other autocrats when the autocrats are in a crisis. And democratic countries don't really help and come to help anymore to the people who are struggling for the democracy in their own countries. People in I'm working a lot with the people in Myanmar. They painfully feel how everybody ignores them in a moment when the junta and when Russia and China are helping junta and nobody helps them. But I think in a very serious way, the colleagues in Georgia are experiencing today how basically they don't get the meaningful assistance from the Europe. How not to talk about colleagues in Azerbaijan, where the Aliyev has completely wiped out the independent civil society and independent media, and nobody in Europe, let's say, basically is doing anything to make any sort of the pressure. They don't even talk with him about these things. So this is kind of another profound understanding, let's say, that when you are, particularly when you are in what I call faraway countries outside of the backyard of the Western democracies, you are left alone in your struggle. The other thing is, going around the world now and talking about human rights violations in our countries, about crimes, doesn't help anymore. Let's say nobody helps anybody today anymore because you are a victim. So kind of going around and showing, let's say, how we are victims doesn't help. What is necessary to show the strength, to show the resilience, to show basically in a certain way that the confidence that we are in a struggle which will prevail and win. Another important insight that in the last 10 years, almost every single big mass protest movement has failed. We have a long history, last 25 years, the big mass creative, very well organized protest movements are happening all around the world. 20 years ago, they have been relatively successful. Last 10 years, one after another, well organized, creative, nationwide, massive, one after another are failing. And then again, we see kind of the activists jumping into calling people on the streets and hoping that, that's the way how to bring the change. I think there are profound lessons which we need to learn from all these failures which happened in the last 10 years. Next insight, or kind of this changed world, which I'm trying to alert myself and everybody about myself, is that we in a civil society are in a 2% elite game. I say we claim that we are representing majority, that we are kind of representing public interest and so on. But when we look more carefully, let's say very often we are just kind of the part of the privileged, educated, cosmopolitan, urban middle class. And we are in a very profound way disconnected from our own societies. And when I started to understand that, I started to use the concept of the abandoned society, that we are the part of the elite and counter-elite game. And at the same time, there's 60-70% of the people in our country are somewhere else. They have different concerns, different values, different mindset, different aspiration than us. And we are basically disconnected. We don't understand them. We don't speak their language. And very kind of dangerously, the populists, the religious political groups, the authoritarians, the right wing has started to be very successful in manipulating or playing the fears, concerns of these kind of the abandoned societies. So they are very good in penetrating the fears and concerns of the big segments of our societies. We are not. And one more kind of the thing that I'm increasingly becoming aware that the dominant collective emotions in a big part of our society is anxiety, fear, anger, and frustration. And understandably so. Let's say in the last 10 years, people in all societies around the world, be it free societies, be it semi-free, be it authoritarian societies, basically people are year after year going through the tremendous shocks which are caused by the globalized world. So the societies are hit by the global economic crisis, by the COVID, by the energy crisis, by the food crisis, by the war, by the impact of the climate change. So there is one major hit to the society happening after another. So there is a very deep sense of the fear and anxieties in our society. And what that means that our usual narratives about human rights, democracy simply do not resonate anymore with the large segments of the society as they have resonated 10, 15 years ago. And what now we have, let's say, because of this fear, because of this anxiety, let's say there are large segments of the society which are basically calling for protection. Let's say they want certainty in an uncertain world. And because of that, let's say the populists and authoritarians have learned very well how to offer to them the strongman ideology, let's say, which the strongman which will kind of protect them. And this is a kind of the new challenge which we really need in a very serious way think how to address it. And the last point about this kind of the changed world, and then I will move to the few reflections about how change happens and how to do things differently on our side. And the last point is this kind of raise of the illiberal right. I say that we see it just happening all around the world. It's not just about Putin who is manipulating these conservative rhetorics. It's not just only Orban and Erdogan. But when we look, let's say, what's going on in India with the Modi and the way how Modi is playing the Hindu ideologies, when we look, let's say, what's happening with the American Christian right, then we just see, let's say, how this kind of illiberal right wing is not just question of the authoritarian manipulation, but it's really kind of the new social movement happening globally. And this behind this social movement, there is a very clear intention. There is a plan, there is a strategy, there is organization. Let's say this illiberal movement is not just happening out of the blue. Let's say there is a very sophisticated structures which are kind of the pushing it forward, spreading it forward. And this is a new challenge, which again, let's say we in a liberal, progressive civil society are simply, let's say, not fully aware of what is the tide which is coming against us. So this is kind of the few reflections on this topic, how the world is different. As I said, I will send a few more notes, let's say, for you to reflect on that. I am fully aware that the things what I'm saying are making people uncomfortable. This is not for the first time that I'm, let's say, talking to somebody. I know that at the beginning people see me as a very pessimistic, as a kind of too putting things in a too dark notions, too much alarm, and in a certain way also maybe a little bit shocking. And I'm partly doing it intentionally. Let's say I really think, let's say, that it's necessary to simplify things, that it's necessary to shake us up, let's say, and in order to wake up properly for the challenge what we are facing. Now, coming to the question, let's say, a few reflections, how the change happens. And this is basically respond on the question, what we need to do differently. So the one thing is that the change, or when we are thinking about, and I always take assumptions that we are thinking about, serious transformative social and political change, what we want to achieve. Do we call it democracy, or we call it equality, or we call it differently, but really kind of serious social, political, transformative change. So these kind of the changings really need time. They don't happen in a first attempt. They usually don't happen even not in a second attempt, but we really need the circles of the change attempts and change efforts. And these circles or seasons are going and have a moments when we have a spring, when we have a summer, that's a good times, but there are also moments of the autumn and in the winter, which are bad, hard times, and things go down. And we simply need to understand how to work with these different circles and different emotions, both emotionally and or organizationally. So what I am kind of advising is I'm advising that we should radically abandon the 1 year project circle approach, in which we are very much kind of put through the donors circles. Let's say through the donors reporting, funding circles. Let's say we are very much locked in this 1 year, maximum 2 years thinking. I think, let's say, that we are now in a times when we need, in a serious way, to think in at least 5-6 year circles. I even think it's even better to think 10 to 12 year circles. So when we are doing planning, when we are doing strategizing, that we are really thinking in a 5-6 years and then 10-12 years, basically in a two electoral circles. And if we change this kind of the way of the thinking, then first we will have emotionally stronger endurance. And the second, we will in a far better way start to use the time as the asset. So that when when we are in a period that so-called nothing happens, then we can use that time to significantly strengthen something what I will call army for the change, so that in a moment when there is opportunity for change or when there is a crisis of the regime, that we are far better prepared. So this is the first kind of the insight or first things what I wanted to kind of put in our minds, that the change takes times, the change is happening in a circles, that we need a couple of circles. The second thing is that we need the movements for the change. We need the movements, that the individual organizations or the few groups of the NGOs are not enough. Even the alliances and the networks of the certain number of the NGOs are not enough. We simply need to build a strong and robust movements, and we don't do that. We are basically always operating on a level of the organizations. We are sometimes operating on the level of the alliance of the few networks, or a little bit bigger forum of the organizations, and we almost never systematically kind of build the capacity and infrastructure for the strong movements. And movements do happen from time to time. Let's say something happened, and then suddenly, let's say there is a big number of the people who are jumping into the actions. But because we are not prepared for this moment, because we have not built this infrastructure, then these kind of spontaneous movements which erupt are either then suppressed and repressed by the brutal regimes, or they just wane out. They burn out by themselves, because there is no organization behind them. So once when we understand, let's say, that we need the movements, and then I have shared with you a few reflections then what the movement ecology means. So I will not go in details. We can in some later point discuss more, let's say, what the movement ecology is. But I think, let's say, there are two very important insights which are coming, let's say, from once when we understand that, and that is that. We need to cultivate the spirit of the togetherness. I see so much in a civil society in the last 10 years, this very strong development in this direction of my issue. I have my issue and I follow my issue. So I'm human rights defender and I do human rights defender. I'm LGBT activist, I do LGBT. I'm environmental activist, I do environment. I'm whatever, let's say, I do my thing. So we are fully locked into the silos of our own issue, and we just overlook in which extent, let's say, we need each other, in which extent we need a much broader alliances to be really capable to achieve change. So the things what I started to strongly advocate is basically to understand the strategic necessity for the get-togetherness. One thing, and the second thing, what it means then in our daily work. Let's say that means that basically we need to invest at least 1/3 of each single of us, every organization or each single of us, we need to invest 1/3 of our time, energy, resources in helping others what is important for them. So not just following my own issue, but helping others what is important for that. Because if I do that systematically, and if you do that systematically, then after the relatively short period of time, we will have a kind of the bonds, kind of the mutual trust and understanding, which will make us much stronger and much more capable for collective actions. The next reflection, or the next food for thought, is that only movements or only organizations which have a grassroots power can win at the end of the day. Without grassroots power, when we are remaining just professionalized, narrow, elite, small NGOs, in a critical moment, we simply don't have leverage, we don't have power, we don't have strength to withstand the oppression of the well-entrenched regimes which we are facing. And once when we understand that we need the grassroots power, that we need something where I call it usually army for the change. Once when we understand then we understand that basically the big part of our work should not be writing reports, should not be traveling to the Brussels or to Geneva or anywhere else, but we need to recruit, we need to train, we need to develop the leaders, we need to give them responsibility, and we need to coach them in a moment when we give them responsibility. And if we do that systematically, then we basically, what we are doing, we are implanting the hubs of the activism, which are not dependent on ourselves. They are self-sustained activist groups which are placed across our own countries geographically and also socially through the different social groups, so that we are just planting these seeds of the activism in our own geographical and social environment. And then our role is just to kind of encourage that, to kind of give a confidence, and then basically to do the nice, fine work of the connecting, building the relational trust. Another part of this kind of the building the grassroots power is about understanding what I mentioned, this abandoned society, that we need to step out of the bubble of the urban progressive privileged educated city people. We need to understand what are the important social groups in our society, and we need to find a way how to organize people within those groups, let's say, not us expecting that they will follow them, but finding the way how we identify and develop leaders from within these social groups who are very, very often very different than us in terms of their concerns, interests, even values. But we will need them. We will, in a moment of the crisis, we will need other social groups if we want to make a real serious social and political change. Another, let's say, point is about, understanding that this ideology, which became very, very popular and very, very spread, ideology of the spontaneous movement, ideology of the horizontality, the ideology of the leaderless movement, let's say that these ideologies are self-inflicted wounds to us as those who want to organize, to lead the movements. What we need, let's say, is a not a horizontal leaderless movement. We need something what in some kind of the theories are described as a leaderful movement. And we need something what I call backbone organizations, let's say. And backbone organizations are the type of the organizations which are doing this work, what I mentioned before, of the constant recruitment, training, implanting the activist seeds and the spreading them. And then these backbone organizations are developing the relations of the trust understanding between themselves, so that they can formulate the common agenda, that they can formulate the common vision, and that they can, in a moment of when the opportunity for the change comes, that they can mobilize the huge grassroots power and then navigate this power in a certain direction. Next warning, what I'm increasingly making is that civil society is not enough. Let's say we have locked ourselves in a wrong ideology that basically civil society is the only necessary change maker, which is not. Let's say for the real change and for the sustainable change, we simply need also political alternatives. Civil society alone is not capable. Civil society sometimes, or activist civil society sometimes can make a democratic breakthrough. But to consolidate democratic breakthrough, to consolidate any achievement, what we have with the protests or any other movement, to consolidate it, that you simply need a credible political alternative. And we don't develop this credible political alternative when we are cultivating this ideology of, oh, no power at all, no politics at all. And by doing that, we are just kind of, in a certain way, creating the vacuum. We are working on a change. We are sometimes creating the conditions for the change. But then if this change happens, let's say it's a vacuum there which we are not capable to fill, and then somebody else is always ready to come in and to fill this space and to capture the political power. So that's the reason why I think that we need, again, let's say, to very seriously reflect and understand that we need street power. But we also need kind of we need to occupy squares and the streets in a critical moment. But we also need to be ready to occupy the state. And we have just kind of disconnected ourselves from this kind of thinking. Last 2 points which I want to make, and then I will stop. One is a question. I don't. I almost don't dare to kind of go as far as is in a kind of my own destructive or provocative thinking, but I'm starting increasingly to ask ourselves: do we need to change a battlefield? Meaning that in the last 30 years, basically the civil society is following. The set of the issues which we can describe: human rights, the political freedoms, the fair elections, the minority rights, the gender and LGBT rights, environmental justice, green economy. Maybe I can add one or two more things. So this is kind of the package of the liberal, democratic, progressive issues, which we are as a balls rolling all of them together. But what happened in last, it started 10 years ago, let's say now it's a much more obvious. It became obvious that kind of exactly these issues are now very successfully used by the authoritarians and by the populist and domestic and foreign ones, are used to polarize our societies. So exactly the things what we are advancing as a kind of the key issues which we are promoting are used by populists and by authoritarians as a very effective tools to create the social polarization. And once when this social polarization happens, and when these kind of the issues are turned in the cultural wars, then we are shocked to realize that basically our issues are supported by the 30% of the society, 30% of the people in our societies. And that 60% of people in our societies, in some societies even more, are more inclined toward the conservative values. So suddenly we are losing these cultural war games, and that is bringing me to the serious question, which I also don't have any kind of the response in this moment, and that is the question: do we need to change the battlefield? Do we need to kind of seriously think: is there some other issues which are generating the new majority? So if the issues which are close to us, which we are promoting, if at the end of the day, let's say basically we can mobilize 30% of the society around these issues, but our opponents, the populists and the authoritarians and the liberals, will mobilize 60% of the people around opposite values. Let's say, do we then need to look in some other issues which are kind of jumping over these polarization issues and which are kind of something what I will call the new majority? And to give you just some indication, I think that the impact of the global economy is creating this new majority. That impact of the global economy is in such a serious way hitting everybody: middle class, the desperate class, the working class, pretty much everybody. And the other thing, impact of the climate change is hitting everybody without difference, whether we stay right, left, middle, liberal, progressive, conservative, because everybody is flooded. Everybody's forest or house is burning, everybody is burned by the sun, or everybody is hit by the heavy floods. So in a certain way, maybe this kind of the impact of the global economy and impact of the climate change is creating a new majority around which it will be in I don't know, 2 years from now on, 5 years from now on, much easier to mobilize the big segments of our people in our countries, not on the issues of the human rights or non-discrimination. And the last point is the point about that what we are facing today is not just authoritarian regimes and a very functional alliance of the authoritarian regimes, but what we are facing today is a very strong alliance of the kleptocracies around the world. And these kind of the kleptocracies around the world are much broader alliance than just authoritarians. This is whole China with their authoritarian state capitalism. It's a kleptocratic mafia in Russia. It's an oil-funded dictatorship in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. It's an Islamic regime in Iran. It's a militaristic regimes in Egypt and in Thailand. It's a illiberal populist in India, Turkey, and Hungary. And it's kind of the global financial system which is enabling this kleptocratic system. And it's maybe United States, which is maybe becoming plutocracy and stopping to be democracy. So suddenly, you have this kind of the kleptocratic alliance, which is kind of in a certain way helping each other. And if that is so, that means we need to revisit questions about economy and how economy works. Because my experience is, maybe, let's say some of you are different, but my experience is that in the last 25, 30 years, basically civic activism or democratic liberal civic activism has completely left outside the thinking and questions about economy. We just kind of have this neoliberal mindset. Economy is solved with the market economy. Globalized market economy is fine. It's working well, problem solved. We need to solve on the political, social, other issues. I'm increasingly persuaded, let's say, that the biggest threat to the democracy, the biggest threat to the freedom is coming from not just from the authoritarians, not just from the conservatives, but it's coming from the way how the global economy functions today. And that if that is so, that means we really need very, very seriously to start to also integrate questions about economy, about the inequality and all other issues into our own thinking and into our kind of the narrative of the change. So these are, few reflections from my side. I'm aware that I probably have overwhelmed you with kind of a lot of things, but I will share with you few more kind of the things what I have formulated step by step. I will share with you the links on the few books which have been, or few kind of readings which have been particularly relevant for me and useful for me. And if you find any of these things kind of that resonate with you or interesting with you, let's kind of go more in a more serious discussion about that. If you have a very kind of a different opinion, or you see some things what I have not mentioned and what I see, please bring these other things into the discussion so that we can jointly kind of start to think ourselves, let's say, how better understand problems, how better to understand our opponents, and how to make ourselves kind of the better prepared for the things what we are doing. So let me stop